Hello everybody, this is Lara from Pure Elliott Wave. This week I'll be giving you a Bitcoin technicals update and your XRP weekly update. So Jack's taking a break this week. It's my turn this week. The snow is melting and I moved down from Switzerland. I'm now in Italy and I'm going to be going back to New Zealand for a month to see my family, including Jack. I'm going to be having probably not regular updates for you for a little while because I've got quite a lot of travel underway at the moment. I'm also furiously trying to get this advanced Elliott Wave course complete, and turns out it's actually really difficult. It's just so much work and it's really complicated to do, so that's taking an enormous amount of my time. I expect it'll be ready in another week or so. So if you want to have an amazingly special launch price offer, never to be repeated again, for that course, then click on the link below and sign up to our list. You'll get notified when we launch that course if you're interested. Bitcoin technicals. Bitcoin is moving lower in a bearish movement. After the last all-time high, there was some bearish divergence between price and RSI and price and money flow. If we get more downward movement, I'll expect really strong support about 73,800. I actually don't expect any lows below about that point. If price does get down to this point, and I don't think downward movement is quite done yet, I do expect support here to be tested and very likely to hold. I need to put a label in here. This is a hammer candlestick pattern. Let's get that in there. On the weekly, give that a fair bit of weight. It's possible, given that hammer candlestick pattern, that downward movement could be complete here at the low for last week beginning 9th of March. It could be complete about 76,580. Current resistance about 92,000. Overall, price is moving lower, overall with declining volume. There's not a lot of strength in this downward movement. So if it does continue, I'm not going to expect it to be by too much more, nor possibly not for very much longer. On balance volume has a widening range. There's no signal. I previously had the support line like this. It was broken, giving us a bearish signal, but that's negated as on balance volume returns above that line. So we draw this trend line, redraw it like that. So we may not get a signal from this widening range. It's just too wide. But no signal to note at this time. Previously, ADX told us there was an extreme upward trend at the all-time high. That trend was waning. It was very extreme previously and only just extreme at the all-time high. Now ADX is declining. The DX lines are starting to whipsaw. This is a look typical of a consolidation. So we are getting some consolidation and pullback to relieve these extreme conditions at the weekly time frame. These extreme conditions are not yet fully relieved. Fully relieved would be if this black ADX line manages to get below one or both of the DX lines, and preferably below 15, and then that would set it up for a strong signal for a trend in either direction. At the all-time high, there was some single bearish divergence between price and RSI. When these pivots are this far apart, I would prefer to look at that at the monthly time frame. This is the weekly. I'm looking at these pivots here. RSI is now below 50, so that extreme overbought condition has been fully relieved. There's plenty of room for the larger secular bull market to resume, or there's plenty of room also for a bear market to develop here. Likewise with money flow, it reached overbought and exhibited bearish divergence. It's not below 50 though, so if we get some more consolidation or a little bit more downward movement taking its time, that could be what we need to see money flow relieved from extreme conditions. Overall, ATR is overall sideways as price is moving a little bit lower, so there's not a lot of strength in this downward movement. At the daily time frame for Bitcoin, we're looking at this downward movement with a little bit more detail. It's characterized by a series of lower highs and a series of lower lows down to the last lowest low. Within this trend of lower highs and lower lows, previous to the lowest low, this is the lowest high. So in order for this trend to be broken, we now need to see a new high above 95,106.04. If that happens, we can have some reasonable confidence that that trend has been broken and we're probably on the way to new all-time highs. While that has not happened, we should always assume the trend remains the same until proven otherwise. If you do that, it'll get you out of trouble more times than not. Within this downward trend, it looks like for the last few days, Bitcoin might be tracing out a little flag pattern. These are reliable continuation patterns. The direction of entry was down, so the direction of exit should also be down. Taking the flagpole from this high to this low and adding that distance, or rather deducting that distance from the breakout point, which I estimate to be about 81,750, gives us a target from a flag at 65,530. But before you can use this target, you absolutely must be patient and wait for a breakout from the flag. A breakout would be a close below the lower edge of this little parallel channel on a downward session, preferably with some push from volume for confidence, but we don't have to have push from volume on downward breakouts. If we see it, it adds more confidence and it's quite impressive. But downward movement can fall of its own weight due to a lack of interest from buyers just as easily as it can due to increased activity from sellers. So the shorthand way we explain that is price falling of its own weight. So if you see a close below this trend line here, then the target would be 65,530. But, however, there's very strong support below at 73,800, so I would be a bit more conservative and I would consider this a much more realistic target. If we do get a break below the flag, I'll be looking for price to fall to 73,800, thereabouts, give or take a couple of hundred either side. For the short term within the flag, price is moving slightly higher, volume is declining. That's pretty common during flag and pennant patterns as they form. On balance, volume is within a little bit of a range here. The support line, I don't have a lot of confidence in that. I'll be very open to redrawing that. So if we get another couple of pivots around here, then I'd redraw that support line and I'd wait for a breakout from on balance volume. It might come before the breakout from the flag pattern, but just be aware the support line has very, very low technical significance. If you draw a little bit more steeply like this, it's too steep to give you this bearish signal with any reliability whatsoever. So I'd just wait for another pivot or two to develop before I draw that support line with any confidence, to be honest. ADX is again increasing after previously telling us this downward trend was extreme, but not quite very extreme. The downward trend is again in place according to ADX, and it's still extreme. RSI reached oversold and it exhibits single bullish divergence. Money flow didn't reach oversold, but it too exhibits single bullish divergence. However, this could be just an interim low within an ongoing bearish movement. It's extreme but not very extreme, and there's only single bullish divergence between price and RSI and price and money flow. You can see the single divergence in an extreme trend at an interim low, and then at the final low you can see multiple divergence develop and a very extreme trend reached, or possibly a waning trend. It looks like the low could be here possibly, or it could be coming up fairly soon. I'm not expecting too much more downward movement from Bitcoin now. ATR is declining, so there's no strength from volume or range up off the last low. So because of declining range and declining volume and this little flag pattern, I don't think we've got the low in yet for Bitcoin. I think we're probably going to get a breakout from the flag, and I think it looks like we're going to get a test of about 73,800 before this downward trend is finally over. Now you could also use a parallel channel around this downward movement, and if you have a higher risk appetite, you could wait for a full green daily candlestick above and not touching this upper trend line of this channel. And then if that happens, you could have a little bit of confidence that this downward trend may be over, the low may be in place, and Bitcoin's on its way to new all-time highs. If you have a lower risk appetite, you might wait for a new swing high above 95,106.04, up to you. Moving on to XRP, and I'm going to change Jack's wave count ever so slightly. I think we might have a little triangle unfolding slightly sideways here for a little fourth wave. I'm still leaving this analysis the same. I have primary 2 complete here, primary 3 underway. We're using 14.72 times the length of primary 1 to give us a target for primary 3 at 27.44. My targets, the same as Jack's. We've got the same wave count apart from this. We've got targets for intermediate 3, 7.6 and 6.11. 6.11 calculated using a fairly extreme Fibonacci ratio, 6.84, 7.6 calculated using a more extreme Fibonacci ratio, 11.09. We use the Fibonacci number sequence to make an estimate of when these waves may end. Primary 3 may end 5th of August 2025. That looks to be far too soon though. I think we're probably looking at longer than a Fibonacci 144 weeks. I think it might take another year or so longer than that, to be honest. Or if intermediate 3 lasts a Fibonacci 377 days from the date it began back down here, it may end July 17th this year. Also, that looks like it might need a little bit longer. Although when XRP does take off, it can move a long way in a very short space of time. So this is actually possible for intermediate 3. Now, give or take a few days either side of these numbers would be acceptable. If this is a fourth wave correction and the triangle is invalidated, I'd still label it minute wave 4. It may unfold as a combination, it may unfold as a flat correction. Either way, it can't move into wave 1 price territory below 6444. Okay, this high here is this high here. Now we're looking at the structure of this potential triangle. Zigzag for A, zigzag for B and C, double zigzag potentially for D. One of the subways of an Elliott Wave triangle should subdivide as a more complicated multiple. We may have subunit W complete. We may be looking for a little 3-wave correction back, maybe to find support at this trend line, and then another 3-wave structure up to complete subunit Y to complete the double zigzag of wave D of the triangle, and then a final little zigzag down to complete E, which is likely to fall short of the AC trend line. This could be either a regular contracting or regular barrier triangle. For a contracting triangle, D may not move beyond the end of B above 3.029. For a barrier triangle, D should end about the same level as B, as long as the BD trend line, if it's up here, remains essentially flat to the eye. In practice, that means that D can end slightly above B. This is the only Elliott Wave rule that is not absolute and involves a small degree of subjectivity. So this upper invalidation point for the triangle is not absolute. We can see a little bit of movement above this. As long as the BD trend line looks essentially flat, the triangle will remain valid. As soon as the BD trend line looks like it has an upward slope like that, that would just look wrong, so then we would invalidate the triangle. When wave D is complete, wave E should be a single zigzag, most likely to fall short of the AC trend line, and the rule for E is absolute. E may not move beyond the end of C below 1.8970. If the triangle is invalidated, then I would relabel the structure of minute wave 4. The wave count at the weekly time frame would remain correct, and I'd be looking at a different structure for this fourth wave. You've got to be a bit flexible with fourth wave corrections. Like B waves, they can subdivide as any Elliott Wave corrective structure, and there are more than 24 possible structures. So you really do need to exert a bit of patience and flexibility, and you can usually only be really confident that an Elliott Wave, fourth wave or B wave is complete and know what structure it is when you can see a complete structure. We can't see a complete structure here for minute wave 4. Well, we could if it's a single zigzag here. I think this structure, labelled as a triangle, has a much better fit than what we've previously seen this as. Let's jump into some technicals for XRP. Just going to do the daily time frame. XRP is moving sideways. It's got resistance about 2.7, support about 1.90, a little bit below that, about 1.70 as well. A little bit of a zone of support and a zone of resistance from 2.7 to about 3.32. There was a new all-time high from XRP, but it didn't close to a new all-time high. But there was support from volume for that upward session. So this is really bullish from XRP. Absolutely unsurprising that we're getting a bit of a pullback and some consolidation to relieve short-term extreme conditions before it's ready to continue that larger secular bullish market. I am still extremely bullish on XRP. I began buying a fair amount of this quite a few years ago. That investment's doing very well indeed. One reason why we update this very regularly on this account is because I'm doing it also for my own investing purposes. Price is moving sideways and lower. Overall volume is declining. That's pretty normal during a consolidation or pullback. Volume on upward sessions remains dominant, so the volume profile remains overall bullish. This gives me more confidence. Yes, we are eventually going to see an upward breakout for XRP. On balance volume is within a range. It's widening. We may not get a signal because the range is widening, but I'll keep an eye on this. ADX is declining. There's no clear trend at the daily time frame for XRP. The ADX line is below both DX lines. This consolidation pullback has fully relieved very extreme conditions, setting the stage again for the resumption of a new trend, either up or down. If the black ADX next line can get below 15, that would be a really good setup for the next bullish run. RSI is neutral and it's below 50. Money flow is neutral, only just a little bit above 50. There's plenty of room for the larger upward trend to resume or a new downward trend to develop. On balance of probability, I still think we're looking at an upward trend for XRP when this consolidation is done. And in the last 4 sessions, ATR has just declined really substantially. So it looks like price is going to find reasonable resistance about 2.7. I'd look for another test of support about 1.90 before I think this consolidation is done. We've got quite a few bullish candlestick reversal patterns at lows, the last a bullish engulfing pattern with support from volume. So I think it looks like XRP is probably going to continue to find support about 1.90. I'm not really expecting too much more movement below that point for it. I expect it's nearly ready to resume its larger upward trend. The Elliott Wave triangle, that looks about right, I think, for XRP. So let's see how that one continues. And Jack will probably be back for your update next week. Thank you everybody so much for your support and for subscribing, and I hope you're all having a lovely week.